In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your knuckle on your Chevy Sonic. It's located behind the front wheel. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to remove our lug nuts. Make sure you got a good hand on the wheel so it doesn't fall off on you. Remove your wheel. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to take out these two bolts that's holding the caliper onto the knuckle. And we're going to have a caliper hanger ready to hang this up. If you don't have a caliper hanger, you can use a bungee cord. Just want it out of the way. Now let's remove our other bolt on the top. Make sure you have a good hand on your caliper. And pull it off. You're going to pull it out of the bracket here and just hang this up. Try not to lose your brake pads while doing that. Sometimes they come loose like this. If that happens, just put it back in and secure it. Now you can remove your rotor. If your rotor has a screw in it, right here, make sure you undo that first so you can take it off. Ours is broken. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to take our tie rod out now. So just get it on that nut on the bottom. Remove that. Now we're going to give it a tap right here with a sledge hammer until it's free from the knuckle. Now we're going to remove this from the knuckle, set it aside. Since we have to press the bearing out of the knuckle, I'm going to take the dust shield off now and get it out of my way. Using a 10mm socket, I'm going to zip those out. There's 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. Now you can remove that. Now we're going to use a 15mm socket and remove this nut for our pinch bolt. Now I'm going to spin the bolt on this end, make sure it's free, and hopefully tap it out. I'm going to put my nut back on just so I don't mushroom out the bottom of the bolt, and I'm going to give it a tap. Looks like our bolt is free, so we can take this off. Now we're going to get a socket and try to pull it out the rest of the way. Just be careful if you hit the end of the bolt, you don't want to mushroom it out, so just give it a love tap to get it out the rest of the way. Now I got a cold chisel and a sledgehammer, and I'm going to try to split this open a little bit to get the ball joint out. I'm going to use an exhaust clamp on my lower control arm so I can pry down with a pry bar and remove the ball joint from the knuckle. Now I have my pry bar, and I'm just going to pry down to see where we're at. Looks like we still have some work to do. If you're replacing your ball joint, you can just use a pickle fork, but we don't want to damage our boot, so we're going to continue doing it the way we're doing it. So we have our ball joint free at this point. So I'm just going to let that rest. And now I'm going to take off my axle nut. Let's unpeen our nut here. Just using a punch. After you unpeen that, we're going to use a 36mm socket and take off this nut. Remove your nut, set it aside. Now we're going to remove our ABS sensor. Let's remove our ABS sensor. I'm using a T30 Chocks. Loosen up that bolt, set it aside. And now we are going to try to lift this sensor out. So now we're just going to pry that out and set it over here off to the side. Use a punch and a hammer and make sure your axle's free. Looks good to me. Using a 21mm socket, we're going to remove our nuts for our strut bolts. Do the same in the top. If you're having trouble getting these strut bolts out, you can put your ball joint back in temporarily. It will go back out again now that you've opened up the back. And you're going to just put the nuts on the bolts and you're going to give them a good whack. And as you can see, the spline on this side's coming out. And we're going to do the same on the top. So now we pop these bolts out enough. We're going to get a pry bar, just take them out the rest of the way, and take our nut off. Like that. Do the same to the bottom. You're not going to go anywhere because your ball joint's back in. And now we're going to put these aside. Now we're going to remove the knuckle. I'm just going to put a pry bar in here and pry it out. Once you get this far, you are going to push your axle out. You may get to a certain point where that axle doesn't want to come out, so just give it a good whack with your punch to get it out the rest of the way. All right, just put that off to the side for now. Once you get it out, I have a bungee cord ready. We're just going to hang this up so it doesn't come out of the transmission. And then we'll continue to take our knuckle out. You can hang that right up on the strut. So let's remove this. Now we're going to remove this clip. To do that, you want to make sure it's free to move around. So I sprayed some rust penetrant in there first. And now I'm just going to see if it moves. Make sure you're in a vise. It's a lot easier. Once you see it moving around a little bit, then you can move on to using a pair of pliers that look like this. And you put them in the holes. And squeeze. You and squeeze and remove. I'm just going to clean this up, and then we're going to go over to the press. So now we're going to press the hub out of the knuckle. I have it set up in the press. You're going to have to do something similar, and we're just going to push the inside out, basically. And there we go. Now we're going to press the bearing out of the knuckle. We have it set up in our press. All right, looks like our bearing is just about out. There we go. So now we have our bearing set up in the knuckle. We have an old one that we're going to press it into. And we're just going to press down. We have the magnetic strip, the black strip on the outside like that, where the ABS sensor would be. And we're going to press this in until it's bottomed out. And we'll release that. And we're going to remove that. So this magnetic piece is on the outside where the ABS sensor will read it. You're going to need some snap ring pliers. And we're going to squeeze this so that it can fit inside the knuckle to hold that bearing in. Once you get it started, you can adjust your pliers and push it in all the way. Make sure it's all the way in. I'm going to move it over a little bit and have the opening where the ABS sensor fits through. If your snap ring isn't where it belongs, you can always move it over with like a flathead screwdriver or a chisel and make sure that it's where it belongs. So now we're going to split this inside race area, and as we press it in, we're going to make sure that doesn't push out. So now we have it set up in the press, and we're just going to press it onto the hub. Right about there. And you're going to let it up. Now we're going to put our knuckle back in. I'm going to rest it on this ball joint. And we're going to get our axle into the knuckle. To do that, we're going to release the bungee that's holding up the axle. And we're going to feed it in. Like that. Line up our strut. Once we get to this point, we can feed our bolt through the ball joint. I'm going to give it a little tap. And get our nut started. Now we're going to put our strut bolts in. Make sure your holes are lined up. The head goes towards the front of the car. We can get our nuts started. I'm going to just tap those in a little bit. And we can tighten those up. We're going to tighten these nuts up. Make sure the head doesn't spin. It shouldn't because it's got spline on it, so. And you're just watching it go in, and when it's flush, you can stop. And then we'll use a torque wrench. We're going to torque these to 82 foot-pounds. Make sure you replace your bolt for your ball joint. We're going to tighten this up. I'm holding the other side with a 15mm socket. Make sure you have a pull jack underneath your control arm. Snug it up, the bolt, and then we're going to torque it to 31 foot-pounds first. And then we're going to loosen it to a little less than half a turn. And then we're going to tighten it again to 26 foot-pounds. So let's tighten that again to 26 foot-pounds. If you see that you're turning on the other side, get a wrench to hold it still. Once you torque it to 26 foot-pounds, you're going to go another 30 degrees. And that should be good. Now you can take your pull jack away. Now I'm going to put my speed sensor back in. Make sure this hole is clean and your sensor is clean. You don't want any debris or rust in there. Press it in. And we're going to put our bolt in. Tighten that down. You want to go about wrist tight, I'd say. I'm going to put my dust plate back now. You can wait until after your tie rod's connected, but I'm just going to do mine now. Just line it up so the holes match. I put a mark on mine to remember where I was going with it. Let's snug those up. Let's snug these up. I'm going to remove my exhaust clamp since we don't need this anymore. We're going to put our tie rod in now. Line it up, push it through. And get that nut started. I'm going to snug this up. Just bottom it out. You want to keep pressure on the tie rod as you tighten it too, so it doesn't pop out. Once you get it flush, we're going to torque that to 22 foot-pounds and then go a third of a turn more. So let's go 22 foot-pounds and then a third of a turn. Let's put some anti-seize on our hub. That'll help for removal in the future and keep the rust away. Now we can put our rotor on. I'm going to save the axle nut for last. And this lug nut will just help hold the rotor still while I put the caliper on. Let's put our caliper on. Now's a good time to remove your hanger as well, so you don't forget. Slide your caliper on. Line it up with the bracket. Now you can get your bolt started, just to hold it there. And I'm going to get my lower one started as well. I'm going to snug these up and torque them to 74 foot-pounds. Now let's put our axle nut on. We're going to slide our brake hose into the bracket and then continue on with the axle nut. So here's our old axle nut. There's two nuts that could come with this. This one has a thin washer here, and it's also able to be peened over. The torque spec for this one is 244 foot-pounds, but we're not reusing our nut. We're going to use the new one. And because this lip is thick, the specification calls for 37 foot-pounds and then an additional 60 degrees. All right, so we're going to put this on. This nut is a 32 millimeter socket, so we're going to snug it up. Once that's snug, we're going to take our lug nut off from putting the brakes back together, and we're going to drop this to the ground so that we can keep this stable with a pry bar on the floor while we torque this nut. I have my pry bar between two lug nut studs, and if you're gentle, you won't need your lug nuts to protect them, and go 37 foot-pounds. Once you get there, then you're going to go 1/8 of a turn. Now you can put your wheel back on, and remember to go get an alignment. Anytime you do suspension work, you definitely want to get an alignment after. Install your wheel. Keep a hand on it in case. And you can get your lug nut started. We're going to tighten up our lug nuts. I usually start with the one on the bottom and walk the wheel on and go in a star-like pattern. We're going to torque our wheels to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to do that in a star-like manner.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.